Just yesterday, a major news story happened which just may decide our next president. A guy who we will talk about, his name is RFK Jr., dropped out of the race and endorsed President Trump, or should I say, former President Trump. Let's look at a sentence explaining what happened. Last night, RFK Jr. dropped out of the presidential race and endorsed former President Donald Trump. Why is this important? Who is this guy? Why is he important? In this English lesson, you will learn about American politics, American history, advanced vocabulary, English idioms, and those pesky English phrasal verbs. If that sounds interesting to you, please hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, and let's get into this lesson. So R.F. Kennedy Jr., or Robert Francis Kennedy Jr., was running for president. He no longer is, and he endorsed President Trump. If you have seen some of my other English videos, you know what endorsed means. If not, let me tell you. That means that person now says, hey, I am voting for Donald Trump, and maybe you should too. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr., or Robert Francis Kennedy Jr., is an American lawyer and an environmental activist. Environmental activist. What is that? In that picture, you can see the earth. So the environment is anything that has to do with keeping the earth healthy. And an activist is someone who tries to make that happen. So let's look at the official definition. An environmental activist is a person who works to protect the environment and fights against pollution and other problems that harm nature. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is also known for not liking vaccines, which has made him a controversial figure. Let's just talk about vaccines first. It's usually a shot that you get that prevents you from getting sick in the future. Oh, YouTube is going to love this English lesson. It will be a miracle if you see this, because I'm talking about vaccines, and later I will be talking about the Kennedy assassination, 2 of them actually. In the United States, a lot of doctors recommend to parents to have their children vaccinated at an early age. This is done so children won't get sick in the future and they won't make others sick. RFK Jr. doesn't believe in that. I've mentioned that he is a controversial figure. Let's talk about what controversial means. The word controversial describes something that people have strong opinions about, either liking it a lot or not really liking it. Some people love RFK Jr., some people don't. RFK Jr. is a controversial figure because some people agree with his ideas, while many others strongly disagree. You might also hear the term polarizing figure. It's the same thing. Some people love him, some people hate him. There aren't too many people in between saying, I don't really care. With RFK Jr. endorsing former President Trump, it's not all rainbows and sunshine, which is an idiom to say everything's perfect. RFK Jr. comes with some baggage. What does that idiom mean? The phrase comes with some baggage means that a person has a past that could cause problems or make people think badly about them. RFK supporting Trump comes with some baggage because both have done or said things in the past that some people do not like. Let's face it, former President Trump is also a controversial figure. He is a polarizing figure. But let's talk about what comes with some baggage means outside of politics. Let's pretend you know a person in their 20s. Maybe they are 23 years old. They do not have children. They have never been married. But they start dating a person who does have children. And they're also in their early 20s. Well, that person could come with some baggage. Those kids could be the baggage. Did I mention this in the picture? Baggage. It's like luggage. It's like extra things you have to carry around. But if it's an idiom, well, it means something different. Those kids would be the baggage, or they could be the baggage. A lot of people in their early 20s don't want to have to think about kids yet. So if they started dating a person who already had children, that might be some baggage that they don't want to have to deal with at such an early age. To fully understand who RFK Jr. is, we need to talk about his family, the Kennedys. They are they are definitely the most famous political family in the United States. RFK Jr. is the son of Robert Kennedy, or you might hear him called RFK. A lot of these guys are known by their initials. The first letter of their name. Robert Francis Kennedy is known as RFK. And he is the nephew of President John F. Kennedy, or JFK. Robert F. Kennedy and John F. Kennedy were brothers. In the picture, you can see three people. We haven't talked about one of them. The shortest one on the left is RFK, Robert F. Kennedy. The one in the middle is Teddy Kennedy, another brother. He was a senator from the state of Massachusetts. And the one all the way to the right is JFK, or John F. Kennedy. And to be honest, two of the brothers come with a lot of baggage. We won't get into that. But the one that doesn't have a lot of baggage, maybe no baggage, is RFK, Robert Francis Kennedy, sometimes known just as Bobby. Bobby is a nickname for Robert. And if you saw President Trump's speech, he called RFK Jr. Bobby quite a bit.
I will tell you, we are both in this to do what's right for the country. That's one thing I can tell you. He lost his father and uncle in service to our country, and Bobby himself was subject to repeated threats to his safety.
Okay, this can get super confusing. There's also an RFK the third. And if you look at that picture, he's a little younger. He is RFK Jr.'s son. Try to follow this. RFK Jr.'s dad was RFK. RFK Jr. has a son also named RFK. So he is called the third. But who is JFK? Who is John Fitzgerald Kennedy? JFK was the 35th president of the United States, serving from 1961 until he was assassinated in 1963. He is well known for his speeches and leadership during the Cold War and the Cuban Missile Crisis.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Do you know the Cold War? That was a period of time after World War II when the United States and Russia, known as the Soviet Union at the time, there were a few other countries with the Soviet Union, Ukraine, Belarus, a long history there, Kazakhstan. Well, the US and the Soviet Union didn't get along too well. And the Cuban Missile Crisis happened in October of 1961, I believe, or 62. And that was a time when the Soviet Union and the United States almost went to war, nuclear war. The Soviet Union was trying to put nuclear missiles on the island of Cuba, which is just 90 miles away from the United States. Now, the United States had nuclear weapons in Turkey, and they were pointed at the Soviet Union, but the United States did not like these nuclear weapons so close to their country. They told the Soviet Union to move them. And thankfully, the Soviet leader at the time, his name was Nikita Khrushchev, he did that. And we did not have World War III or nuclear war, but it was close. And President Kennedy was our president at the time. JFK was the older brother of RFK and the uncle of RFK Jr. So who is RFK? And if you look, Robert F. Kennedy Sr., sometimes we call the father senior just so we know the difference between senior and junior. Robert F. Kennedy was U.S. Attorney General, which is like the highest lawyer, a very important position in the United States. He was also a senator, and he played an important role in civil rights and fighting organized crime in the 1960s. When you hear civil rights, think 1960s, you might think about that guy in the picture. His name is Martin Luther King Jr., also known by his initials sometimes, MLK. And it was a period of time in the United States where if your skin was black or not white, if you were anything but white, you did not have the same rights as people who were white. And there was a big fight in the 1960s to try to get some laws passed so things would be more equal. I don't want to talk too much about organized crime, but we sometimes call it the mob. And if you've ever seen movies like Godfather or Goodfellas, that is what organized crime is. RFK Sr. was a close advisor to his brother, so he gave a lot of advice to John F. Kennedy, the president. He helped him out a lot. Unfortunately, while he was running for president in 1968, he was also assassinated. Let's go back to 2024 and talk about RFK Jr. He was what was called a third-party candidate. In the United States, if you've been watching my videos, you know we have two major political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. And if you are running for president and you're not a Republican or a Democrat, you are called a third-party candidate. To be honest, third-party candidates have no chance of winning. There is just too much money on the Republican side and on the Democratic side. But let's get the official definition of what a third-party candidate is. A third-party candidate is someone who runs for president but is not from one of the two main political parties, Democrats and Republicans. Let's look at an example sentence. In the 2024 election, some voters supported a third-party candidate instead of choosing between the main parties. And that third-party candidate was RFK Jr. Some people think that now that RFK is not running and he has endorsed former President Trump, the people who were going to vote for RFK Jr. will now vote for President Trump. And that might give him the presidency. We'll talk about that in a minute. But there are some people who call themselves never Trumpers. Never Trump, which is exactly what it sounds like. A person, usually a Republican, who is strongly against Donald Trump and refuses to support him. Some of those never Trumpers were going to vote for RFK Jr. Now that he is not running, some never Trumpers will probably just not vote. I'm not sure if they will actually vote for President Trump. Here's a sentence using never Trumpers. Even though they are Republicans, some people call themselves never Trumpers because they don't agree with Trump's views. You also might hear this, an independent. Let's talk about what an independent voter is. If someone isn't a Republican or a Democrat, they might be an independent. So let's look at a recent poll here about people voting for president. If you look at that bar in blue, those are people who support Vice President Harris. Democrats are usually a blue color. We have blue states, we have red states. Red would be people who are supporting President Trump. And if you look at those numbers, they do not add up to 100%. Look at that first one for all adults. According to the poll, 50% of adults will be voting for Vice President Harris. 45% will be voting for President Trump. Now, those extra 5%, they might be voting for RFK Jr., or they would have voted for him until he dropped out of the race, or they might be something we call undecided. They don't know who they are voting for yet. We talked about a lot of things in this English lesson. If you are still looking for more English, right down there, 2 hours, over 2 hours of English lessons about politics. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.